All right, today we're tackling the living world in one massive high-speed revision. So if you're gearing up for an exam or you're just really curious about how scientists bring order to the millions of species on our planet, you've come to the right place. Let's dive right in.
I mean, just think about that number for a second. Over 1.7 million known species. And get this, scientists think that's just a tiny fraction of what's actually out there. It's kind of like being dropped into a massive library where millions of books are just scattered everywhere, with no system at all. So before we can even think about sorting them, we have to ask a really basic question. What even counts as a book in our library?
You see, before we can classify life, we have to define it. It's that simple. We need a solid set of rules, the fundamentals of the game, because without them, we wouldn't even know what to include in our system. What are those absolute non-negotiable traits that separate something living, like a tiny bacterium, from something non-living, like a rock? Let's break down those core rules.
Okay, first up, metabolism. The easiest way to think about this is to picture your body as a car. The food you eat, that's the fuel. Metabolism is the engine, constantly running, burning that fuel to give you energy for absolutely everything, moving, thinking, breathing, even just keeping your body warm. It's this continuous, controlled chemical fire that is the very essence of being alive. Next, we've got growth, and we see this everywhere, right? A little sapling turns into a giant tree. A baby grows into an adult. It's a permanent increase in size. But here's a thought. A mountain also grows when sand and rock build up on its surface. So is growth a true defining feature of life, or is there a catch? That's a super important question. And that leads us to consciousness. Now, this is arguably the most important, the most complex, and the most defining feature of all. It's simply the ability to sense what's going on around you and react to it. You touch a hot stove, you pull your hand back fast. A sunflower senses sunlight and turns to face it. This is the one characteristic that every single living thing has and no non-living thing does. It's the real deal. Okay, pay attention, because this slide right here is a huge takeaway, especially for any exam. On the left, you've got the defining features of life: metabolism, having a cellular structure, and consciousness. These have zero exceptions. If it's alive, it has them, period. But on the right, we have the non-defining features, like growth and reproduction. Why? Because there are exceptions. We just talked about mountains growing. And think about it, a mule is definitely a living thing, but it can't reproduce. This is also why viruses are so tricky. They're in this gray area where they can't do much of anything without hijacking a host cell. Understanding this difference is absolutely key. So, now that we have our rules for what living actually means, we can get back to our huge, messy library of 1.7 million species. We know what qualifies as a book. The next big question is, how do we start sorting them onto the shelves? We need a system. You know, the best way to wrap your head around this is to think of it like a mailing address. If you want to send a letter to one specific person on the planet, you need their country, their state, their city, their street, and finally their house number. Each one of those steps narrows it down from billions of people to just one. Well, biologists needed that exact same kind of address system for every single living thing. And that system, that biological address book, has a name. It's called taxonomy. It's the whole science of creating that address. It gives every organism a unique name, a detailed description, and a very specific spot in the grand organized library of life. It's the brilliant solution to the overwhelming problem of biodiversity. So this whole system is built on a hierarchy. You can just picture it as a ladder with a bunch of different rungs. We start way up at the top with the biggest, most general categories. And with every step we take down that ladder, things get more and more specific. So let's check out those rungs. Now, I know what you're thinking. How on earth am I supposed to remember all 7 of these levels, especially in the right order and under pressure? Don't worry, I got you. Here is a fantastic little memory hack that works every single time. All you have to do is remember this one simple sentence: keep pots clean or family gets sick. The first letter of each word gives you the rank in perfect order. Keep for kingdom, pots for phylum, clean for class, or for order, family for family, gets for genus, and sick for species. Easy, right? It's simple, it's effective, and it's really hard to forget. Okay, so theory is great, but let's make this real. Let's see how this whole address system actually works by finding the biological address for an organism we all happen to know pretty well, ourselves. And look at this. It lays it out perfectly. We start broad at the top, kingdom Animalia. Yep, we're animals. Then we narrow it down. Phylum Chordata, we have a spinal cord. Class Mammalia, we have hair, we produce milk. It gets even more specific with order Primata and family Hominae until we finally arrive at our unique two-part scientific name, genus Homo and species Sapiens. See how we just zoomed in from all the animals on Earth to just us? That is the power of taxonomy. So you might be wondering, how do scientists actually do all this? They don't just sit around and guess, right? Of course not. They have a whole toolkit, what we call taxonomical aids, to help them identify and classify all these different organisms. Let's run through these real quick. A herbarium is basically a library for plants, where specimens are dried, pressed, and labeled with all the important info. Museums do the same thing, but for preserved animals and other organisms. Then you have botanical gardens and zoological parks, which are basically living libraries, right? And finally, you have the key. A key is an amazing analytical tool. It's like a game of 20 questions for biologists, with a series of paired choices, like does it have feathers or does it have scales, that guides them step by step to the right identification. Okay, so we've covered the what and the how, but let's just zoom out for a second and ask the biggest question of all. Why? Why does any of this matter? Why go through all this trouble just to name things and put them in neat little boxes? Well, because taxonomy is so much more than just putting labels on things. It's about building the family tree for all of life on Earth. This system is what reveals the deep, incredible evolutionary connections between you, a mushroom, a giant redwood tree, and a blue whale. It's the blueprint that shows us how every living thing is related. And this, right here, is what makes biology so unbelievably exciting. We've identified and classified almost 2 million species, but scientists think there could be 8.7 million, or even more, still out there, waiting to be found in the deepest parts of our oceans or the highest canopies of our rainforests. The great map of life is nowhere near complete, which really just leaves one question. What will you discover?